Welcome to the Nightlife Podcast, Season 4, Episode 8. Guys, today I have the pleasure of sitting down with Jason Littrell, bartender, author, consultant, you name it, a man who wears many hats. Somebody who I definitely am glad I ran into. This guy is one of those people who is giving back to our community, to our industry, and, is helping others. The same way that I wish I have been doing for you. So please, first of all, make sure you go to Amazon and get his book, Bartender as a Business. It's not just for bartenders, but I don't want you to wait any longer. Let's now get into this conversation with Mr. Jason Littrell. Welcome, Jason. How are you, my man?
Hey, Julio. Thank you for having me on the show. I'm very excited to be here.
No, man. I don't think you're as excited as I am. I'm going to tell you one thing. When I started doing this, by this, I don't mean working in the nightlife industry, but by this, I mean like writing a book and trying to leave a legacy somehow or help other people, creating courses and all those kinds of things. When I realized that there was something else out there that I could actually help others, what I found at the beginning was that there weren't that many people doing the same thing in our industry. And I feel like a lot of people in our industry need a little more, compassion and some help from those that have been around, So finding people that are doing the same is an amazing feeling. The minute that I saw your book right away, I was like, man, I gotta get it. And I gotta start reading. I haven't finished it. I'm reading it, but I definitely.
It's a short, snackable book, but thank you so much for picking it up. And I appreciate the leadership that you've shown. There's just so many different things to talk about with this, with what's going on right now. We're talking about compassion and leadership. I don't think we're going to really see that from the federal government. And now is the time for us to kind of take the reins for ourselves and decide what our own future is going to be, and not be beholden to any one single employer. Because the thesis, one of the primary theses of the book, although it's hopefully very accessible, is that we have all the skills that we need as independent hospitality workers, because the truth is if we don't work, we don't eat. And there is very little difference between that and what an entrepreneur does. The big difference is that bartenders and servers and hospitality workers, they have one place that they have to show up, and they have rules around that. Whereas if you're an entrepreneur, you can solve any kind of problem. So our ability to work 12 hours without peeing or eating, our ability to withstand a significant and substantial amount of bullshit from guests, from unreasonable guests, uniquely qualifies us to be business people and on our own. And I'm not saying go out and quit your job. In fact, I emphatically say don't quit your job, because you can learn about the business side if you're interested in while you're working. But the truth is that there are roughly 15.7 million service and hospitality workers in the United States, and it's estimated that up to 60% of these bars and restaurants are not going to reopen. So that leaves around 6.5, 7 million people that are going to have to figure something out and switch.
Right.
So this book was written for them, for the people who are just like, I'm not going to take this anymore. I have everything that I need. I can do this with $0, zero business account. I don't even need an idea. All I need to do is plant my flag in the ground and say, I am available for hire for whatever it is that I do.
Right. So before we dive into more details of, what bartender as a business talks about, tell me a little more about your beginning in the industry. How did you become a bartender? How did you find out that you like this?
Well, my mom told me from a really young age that I would be a great bartender or a great shrink.
Which you actually use both of them in this industry.
Yeah. I guess they're kind of one and the same. I wasn't really too excited about school. I love learning, but I was never really great at school. Never really too interested in like the structured learning of it. But I read about a book a week. I'm constantly reading. I love learning, but it was just school wasn't right for me at that time. And so I moved on and went to work for radio stations. I worked at gas stations. I worked a bunch of lame jobs, and that ultimately led me to like being a tour manager of a band. And so I traveled the country and Canada several times over the course of a couple of years, and played in bands and did all this really, really fun stuff. But, I didn't really have a lot to show for it at the end of it. And then one of the jobs that I took out of just basically desperation was at this local bar called Julio's in East County, San Diego. That's where I met my first mentor, who kind of guided me through. His name is Tom Dowd. He actually works in Fado in Chicago now, but he's a really interesting guy. But he kind of walked me through what the possibilities were, and kind of guided me along, how to basically act and develop a career out of in service and hospitality. So I started off washing dishes, bussing tables. Then I ended up waiting tables, and they wouldn't give me a job as a bartender because they only hired women. I quit that job and then started working someplace at this completely massive dive. It was just like it's still to this day one of the worst bars I've ever been in. And I worked there 40 hours a week from 10 to 6, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. I was the day bartender, and I had replaced a bartender that was rumored to have been stabbed by one of the guests. So nobody would really tell me the real story. But it was a dump, and it was like a Hell's Angels stronghold, and there was meth being dealt over the bar all the time. It was crazy. But that was also a lot of great experience that I really appreciated. Long story short, I zipped over to New York to play drums, to record an album with a friend. And that lasted about 3 months. I had to get a job right out of the gate. So I started walking dogs. In New York, you can't get a job unless you have experience, and the experience that I had didn't matter.
Right.
I lied on my resume and got my first job, and then worked my way up through the ranks across different bars. Eventually worked at a bar called the Randolph, which eventually hired Sasha Petrasky to consult on the bar program. And that's when I got my first real cocktail training. So if you don't know Sasha Petrasky, he's like kind of considered one of the godfathers of the cocktail revival in New York about 15 years ago. So I got to train very closely for a very short amount of time with him, but that was probably the most I'd ever learned in the shortest amount of time. And then from that, I eventually worked at a Dram, which is in Brooklyn, another cocktail bar. In the nightclub scene, there's no money in cocktail bars, so I had to work in nightclubs as well.
Right.
So I worked in a couple of places in Chelsea, and on 28th Street, famous 28th Street nightclubs.
To those that don't understand the difference, can you say a little bit more about that? The nightclub versus.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you work in nightclubs, it's hit or miss, just like any other bar. But when the money's good, it's really good.
Right.
When it's bad, it's really bad.
Right.
And it's just a different kind of thing. But it's, nightclubs are where you get really, really fast. So I was able to adapt a lot of skills from nightclub work into cocktail work.
And also, in a way, I think nightclub, you need to know a little less as to the mixology part of it. Kind of, no?
Perhaps. I would say it's different. I mean, there's a lot of politics in nightclubs that doesn't exist in cocktail bars.
Right. I mean, I'm saying, like, for example, in Miami, it's like rum and coke. I mean,
mojitos, Long Island.
But that's like the most complicated thing. Like, I know bartenders that when somebody comes to them and says, "Let me have a mojito," they will give you a face that you will not come back to that bar ever again.
For some reason, that's like a 4-ingredient drink. I'm like, yes, no, I'm not going to talk you out of a mojito so I can serve you a 9-bottle pickup zombie.
Exactly. Exactly.
You'll get the mojito. In fact, if you want a vodka soda, you're going to get that too real fast. You're first in line, buddy. But yeah, I mean, it was a very interesting learning experience working in both worlds. But my passion was in making cocktails, and I was working with some of the best bartenders in the world, and I eventually got a job at Death & Company, where I was for 2.5 years before I actually started my own business in hospitality and events consulting. Okay.
You say at the beginning of this of the explanation of how you got into it, you said your mom said you would have been a good bartender or shrink. Was this like the ability to talk to people, listen to people, or were you making drinks for her? What was the whole? Where is this coming from, really?
I think it was more of a personality thing, and I mean, it's just it was one of those things that you just say to a kid, just kind of as a joke. But I remember exactly where we were, exactly the intersection, exactly that we were in this 1990 Pontiac Beretta at the corner of Waring and Navajo in Allied Gardens, San Diego, which is about a mile from San Diego State. I remember exactly where we were when she said that to me. And so that may have been one of the turning points in my life, because I don't know, because I've always had it in the back of my head that I would love to be a bartender. I mean, I wanted to play stadiums as a drummer for sure, but
ever thought what would have happened if you would have been a shrink?
I don't know. I would feel Probably worse for my guests than I do now.
right? Uh, Definitely,
Um,
definitely. All right, so
yeah, no.
you've been doing this for over a decade, right? More 12 years, is that what it is?
Uh,
Or
you know
bartending?
what? I feel like I've been saying a decade for a long time.
Yeah,
I think
right.
it's probably closer to 15 years now. That
Right.
I was behind bars for 10 years, and then I've been in the business, and then I started my business in 2010. So that's another 10 years. So
Hmm.
rough, almost 20 years probably.
Right.
Is probably close to right. I'm 39 years old. I didn't start shaking until I was 21 because you can't have a bar shift in California until you're 21. So the math is 19 years on that.
Right. Right. Let me ask you a question. When do you make the decision? Okay, I'm gonna get into consulting instead of just behind the bar.
Thank you for that question. That was a really tough question, and frankly, I left a little too early. I had so much more to learn about making drinks and how to run bars. So it was very much a fail forward situation. But it started off like people would kind of give me their business cards over the bar and say, "Hey, I'm putting a bar together and I need some recipes, or I have an event. Do you know how to make these drinks at this event?" And I said,
Hmm.
"Yeah, sure." And I didn't know. But I didn't know how to use spreadsheets. I just did math on a notebook by hand. So there were lots of mistakes. I guess I was kind of charming because people called me back occasionally, and I was
Right.
able to build a business on it. And the first year I lost money, like lost a little bit of money. The second year I I was doing okay, and then the third
Right.
year I quit my job, and I said,
Right. I mean,
it's time to make the leap and go full time. Yeah.
right. Besides being charming, I'm sure a lot of the people that called you back knew even less than what you didn't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I didn't know nearly as much as like Aisha Sharp and Willie
Right. Like,
Shine
right.
and
Like an
Andy
actual.
Seymour.
Right. Right.
Like,
I mean,
I felt like a baby because these guys were just blowing out stadiums.
I'm sure you
Um,
weren't, charging as they were. You know.
I have no
So.
idea, but probably not. I was probably obnoxiously competitive price wise. And I've since learned that competing on price is a fool's errand.
Right.
So if you're out there selling your services independently, then try to be the most expensive service there is because people shop for that.
Right. So how do you get better at consulting?
It's a lot of self-education. This was kind of before Google Drive and like you could have Excel. So I had to learn how to use Excel. I wasn't very good at it. And I had to just like look on the internet and find out how.
Right.
I mean, the cool thing is that the knowledge is democratized now more than it's ever been. Anything that is knowable can be learned on YouTube. You want to learn how to figure out a Rubik's cube. You want to
Hmm.
figure out to write a book. I learned how to write my book on YouTube. I said,
Me
how
too.
do I write it? Yeah, I said, how do I write a book? And there's like just like this sea of things saying like
I
this is how you
remember. I
write a book.
remember my Google search was how to write a book ASAP.
Yeah, no,
And
there are people who write books in a weekend.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm not that guy, but it took me 2 years. I know. I mean,
It's
I
a,
was
it,
I was expecting a kid, then he was born, and then I couldn't finish when he was born. I thought I was gonna do it before the time he arrived. I wasn't able to, and then my wife gets pregnant. We're expecting twins, and
Whoa.
yeah, exactly. Now I have three. So when I heard twins, I was like, I need to finish this before they come. For
Oh
sure.
yeah.
That's how I got to finish. So yeah.
Wow, that's a really common story, but I think that really interesting point, especially with your business and kind of where our businesses kind of align, is that you can you can provide a service, and you can do you can provide a product, but I think it was Bill Gates who said that every company is a media company, and if you're not in the business of media, like as in like selling and marketing your products or your
Mm-hmm.
services, then you're not going to be in business for very long, or you're
Right.
leaving a lot on the table, or you're not really planning for your retirement. So,
Right.
I mean, my pivot for when COVID hit was that I was going to get into small business consulting. So I've amassed a lot of information over the last 10 years of running my own business and I can help people avoid a lot of stumbling blocks that costed me hundreds of thousands of dollars in mistakes. And so I offer that as a service with my coaching business. The truth is that you're not always going to do everything right. But again, everything that can possibly be knowable is found online. And so all you have to do is be one step ahead of your clients. So, I encourage people to, especially if you're a service and hospitality worker who's out of work right now, the money will run out. Our federal government is borrowing the money to pay our unemployment, and that's not going to last forever.
Right.
So, I've just been encouraging people to look at all the classes that you took in college. What did you like? What are your hobbies? What are your favorite things to do? What do you do when you're not working? Turn that into a business, and because it could be something. It could be the thing that you just never knew that you were into. But unfortunately, there's a ton of people out there that want to write recipes for money, and there just isn't a market for it.
Right.
So it's unfortunate. It sucks, but we can apply that creativity into other places for sure,
Right.
especially in restaurant management skills. There's not like in bar and restaurant and nightlife. There's very few other industries that are as regulated and have to tolerate so much crap as we do. And so that patience and that understanding of how to operate a very complex, very cutthroat business, not cutthroat, but very competitive business, is very much a marketable skill for a lot of different businesses.
Right. So let me ask you, the same way that you vividly remember being in that Pontiac when your mom told you what you were going to be doing, do you remember the moment when you made a decision to, not just write this book, but for you to actually turn your bartending into a business? When was that moment?
Yeah, I remember quitting. I remember quitting Death and Co. And I remember being like, "Is this the right thing for me? Is this the hill I die on?"
You quit. Well, let me ask this, because in this business, it happens a lot when you make this decision. You quit while you were doing good, correct?
Yep. I quit when I had been there for 2 years. I was loving the job. I just honestly felt it wasn't really fair for the people around me because they had to cover my shifts all the time, so I could do events. You just eventually have to take a risk, and you have to eventually just jump off the cliff and hopefully your parachute opens. I didn't have much savings. I just had, my phone was ringing. I was the former president of the USBG in New York, so people thought that I knew what I was talking about. They assumed I knew what I was talking about. I didn't. I still don't. It's just a risk, and I just wanted, like my relationship with Death and Co. lasted years and years and years. I mean, like the doorman would call out, I would be there. The barback called out, I would be there. If a bartender called out, it would be like, okay, well, we're making daiquiris and old fashions tonight because I don't know this menu. If you're not familiar with Death and Co., it's like 50 to 60 menu items, seasonally. So it's like if you don't work there for a month, then you probably don't know
no idea what's happening.
Menu. Right. You don't know the me's, you don't know what's in the bottles, you don't know what's in the batches. It's crazy. You can't just walk into that job.
So it's really death of a bartender.
Yeah. But yeah, and I mean, what precipitated the book was the same. Like mine took about 2 years to actually write, but 90% of it was written in the last 3 months. Because I had an outline, I had the person, like the kind of avatar that I was writing the book for. That's a really important thing if you want to write a book, is you need to know who you're writing it for.
Right.
And then all this hit, and I was just like, this book is important right now. This book is usable right now. So it's available on Amazon. It's I do not make money on it. I think I make like maybe 75 cents on the paperbacks. And then I think like 25 cents on the Kindle version. So this isn't about making money for me. It's about conveying some knowledge and some information that I think is important to me that I wish I knew 10 years ago starting out. And then this is just the first version of it. I mean, I've already unfortunately seen a few typos, but also some information that has already evolved. And so if you follow me on social media and if you look at my stories on Instagram and Medium, then you'll see kind of where my head is at as far as sales and marketing of an independent solopreneur business. So you can find all that stuff at Jason Littrell.
Right. So what would be the easiest way to describe what the meaning of bartender as a business is?
Yeah, so the tagline is the book's called Bartender as a Business, and then the tagline is agency from craft, or building agency from craft. And so what it is that I'm trying to share some information that allows you to take it and then build your own agency from the skills that you've earned and that you've learned from the craft that you practiced before. If you're, people, we just don't think about it like in terms of how what our role is in running a business. Yes, there's a lot that goes into it, like finding a space, signing a lease, dealing with bankers, if you're dealing with investors, dealing with distributors, breakage, leakage, insurance, blah 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 blah. But as far as as far as like, your bartender, like your entrepreneurial sense is that you show up to work and you don't know if you're going to make money or not. And so, but you still have to run the business because the business is the vehicle through which you make money. So you have to take care of it. And when you don't take care of it, then you're quite easily expendable. I don't know how it works in Florida, but it's New York is at will, and you can get shit canned in 5 seconds. Oh, yeah. Especially if you're late or drunk. But yeah. But yeah, so it's like there's a lot, and we tend to have an understanding of it. Most of the time, especially in smaller businesses, you have some sort of a managerial responsibility, anyways. And these are people outsource management of bars and restaurants all the time. And it's if I were like even, I don't know, I can think of if I were a food truck or if I were just there's so many different businesses that those skills apply to, just in being able to withstand a lot of pressure. And to have just be organized enough to be like, this is what I think we should do now. And this is what's most important right now. Because what do we do all day but prioritize? What do we do all day but organize? Right. I don't know. I've worked with some messy bartenders, but not for very long.
Right. How would you define or describe that avatar you were thinking of when you were writing it?
Well, it's actually based on somebody that I know. And the idea originally, it definitely evolved, but it was definitely somebody who was very influential in the bar world, somebody who was extremely good at what they do and has a lot of recognition for it. But they had a hard time getting like invoicing and getting paid for their work and valuing their work in a way that was competitive and just like the kind of nuts and bolts of running a business. And so I actually wrote it down and built this whole avatar around who this person was, how old they were, roughly what their education was, like what their strengths and weaknesses were. And then I wrote a 10-chapter outline, which I forget how many chapters are in the book, but it's like, then I wrote down exactly in a linear way what I thought the most important information would be. And then I just started dictating it into Otter. And then I sent it out for editing, and then that's it, and that's a book. Right. The point is like, writing a book isn't as hard as people think it is. But it is attainable for anybody. Anybody can write a book. Anybody can start a podcast. Anybody can have a YouTube channel. There are no limitations. We have these remarkably powerful computers in our pockets that can do a staggering amount of functions. And as my friend Michael Neff would say, we can't all be generals, but you can spread a lot of influence and gain a lot of attention just with the cell phone in your pocket if you're trying to sell something. And so when people ask me about why did I write the book or who do I write the book for, generally speaking, we have a sales and marketing problem. So we don't know how to market and sell what it is that we do. So when we say, oh, well, a lot of times we have a hard time articulating what we do. Right. For those people, I would say check out Fiverr, check out Upwork, and see what other people are selling, and then put a huge price tag on it. Get good at it from YouTube or from take an online course or whatever. Get good at that skill, and then put a price tag on it. Like if you want, like people are building websites like every single day. People are building marketing funnels every single day. And if you're good at that stuff, then there's no limit to what you can charge for it. There's no limit to how many clients you can have, and there's no limit to your ability to sell and market it. But we have a hard time saying this is what I do and this is my number. Right. That's disappointing for me.
What is the age you think ideally for somebody to start doing this? And more than start, what is the age that is like it's time to get out? Bartending, not.
If to get out of bartending, I was. When I was tending bar, I was drinking a lot. I was pretty reckless, and like I was worried that I would eventually hurt myself and that it wasn't sustainable. I was practicing some pretty good ergonomics and like, using my left hand to build. I was ambidextrous and I was pivoting rather than bending and doing a bunch of good stuff. But honestly, I just, I always knew that it was a job. And but as far as like how old you should be, I think that I think that you should kind of just go with the flow. And it depends on your risk tolerance, but age doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. I mean, you may have to be 21 in some states to get some insurance, but otherwise it doesn't matter how old you are to start, and it doesn't have to. cost you an enormous amount of money. I think I started my business with like $350, and since then it's ebbed and flowed, and obviously it tanked in this last year. But I was having $1 million years,
Right.
in gross sales. I didn't get to keep that.
Right.
The measurement is how much you get to keep, not how much you make.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, there is no age. There's no, you could be 70 years old and start a business as long as there is a market for what you do. In fact, you don't even need an LLC. You don't even need to spend any money to start a business. In some states, like California, for instance, you have to pay an annual fee in taxes. Like Delaware, you have to pay an annual fee in taxes, it's like $500 or something like that.
Right.
But some states, you don't have to pay an annual fee. You just file an LLC, and then you're in business. If you don't want to pay that fee, if you're in one of those states, you just say I'm in business, and they have to write checks to your name.
And by the way, you do talk about this in the book as well, not just the mindset and the general idea of what it would be like or whatever, but actual action of this is what you have to do, which is important.
Yeah, I try to make it as paint by numbers as possible, and as linear as possible. There's a lot of talk about failure. There's a lot of talk about mindset. I think we have this really odd perception of what failure means in this country.
Right.
At least as a society, we're just like, oh, well, we shouldn't fail. We should win every time. Well, that's, if I'm not sure if I'd want to work with somebody who won all the time, because they haven't made any mistakes. They haven't learned anything.
Right. The reason I asked you, Jason, about the age was more, I was thinking about a lot of girls, a lot of women that are doing it, that are bartending over here in Miami, Florida, and making $1,000, $1,500 a night, plus depending on the venue. Driving Range Rovers, living in a nice apartment, and not ever starting a business, always having a job, and then one day they don't have that pretty face and they don't have that, body, and they're no longer seen, the way they used to be when I think at the beginning of the conversation, the first job you took, you said something about they didn't, hire men at one that you were, so it is an issue. I mean, that the fact that, and I've been talking to a lot of women in the industry, and they don't like the fact that they need to look a certain way. Not in every venue, of course, and not in every industry or every business or every location, but it is a reality. Places like Miami, it is definitely real.
Yeah, absolutely. Like money savvy. It's not something that they should teach us this in like elementary school and high school, like what to do with your money.
Right.
If I made $1 million today, my lifestyle would not change one bit.
100%. Would not change one bit.
And it's like there's some things that have come across actually recently. I'll show you this book. This may sound crazy, but I've liquidated all my stocks in the stock market. And I'm sitting around waiting to put them into a life insurance policy. Now, people will always roll their eyes. They're like, what are you doing putting your money into a life insurance policy? But it's actually an investment grade life insurance policy. I know this isn't like a finance show, but there's like really wacky things that the rich folks have always done that we can do with our tip money or with even our, with whatever money we make. And so like, if I were making $1,500 a night, I mean, and at one point I was doing pretty, like I wasn't doing that good, but I was doing pretty well. And I remember I had like an envelope in cash because I was afraid that the IRS was going to come and take it.
Right.
But the IRS doesn't care about me. It's funny. Put your money in the bank. If you have cash, put your money in the bank. That's where it's safe. And then
my first partner did not believe in banks. He had a safety, box or whatever in his house. And one day, like, my issue was I would spend the money when I was young. Yes. I started at 18 doing this and making, I don't know, like 20 grand when I was 20 or so. And a month I was like, woohoo. It was mostly cash.
20 grand a month at 20?
At 20 years old as a club promoter. And it was crazy. It was an amazing time. By the way, all that money's gone.
Yeah.
And that I was spending like crazy, and everybody was like, oh my god, this guy is spending money so much in the weirdest things and whatever. And but at the end I was like, thank God I spent it. My partner, we never found out who, but they took the box the whole month, like. And he had, at the time they took like 80 grand or so, like from him cash. I was like, at 20 years old, believe me, it hurts.
Yeah, that's a drag.
But yeah, definitely, put the money in the bank
Yeah, I
and
mean,
report it.
I think the point is like use your money as a tool. Don't use your money as something to buy stuff because there's always going to be more things to buy, and there's always going to be more things that you want. But it's like as you get older, I mean, it's like if I'm talking to my 20-year-old self before I had kids, it's like now I'm thinking, now that I have a 2-year-old son, I'm thinking about how do I provide for him after I'm gone? Like how do I provide generational wealth? And so that's what I'm looking into, like whole life insurances with like riders and stuff like that to make them like investment grade.
Right.
But if that's not your thing, check out just Google the infinite banking concept and watch a few YouTube videos on it. It's very, very interesting. But otherwise, put your money in the stock market or let it grow and invest in it. Make it something that you can borrow against, so you can buy something that is a real investment, because it's just like there's nothing more stressful than uncertainty. Right. And I mean, obviously, we have a lot to be stressed out about. We've got hurricanes, we've got fires, we've got viruses, we have political uncertainty, we've got racial inequality, we have like all these other crazy things. Like, make it easier on yourself. Money can be predictable.
Right. Did you ever think of ownership at all, partnering or opening something of your own?
You know what? I'm going to sound like an asshole saying this, but knowing what I know from all the bar consults that I've done and especially in New York, just the compliance risks, I've never been interested in owning a bar. Well, I have dipped my foot into the game a couple of times here and there. And I opened up a Miracle, one of the Christmas bars last year that was supposed to slingshot me into another project, but that ended up not panning out. And I'm kind of glad it didn't, because the bar business is a tough business. And the number one reason for bars failing is for undercapitalization. And so unless it was like a really well capitalized project, like I'm working with a big commercial development company right now for a project in New York, and I don't have to think about that, because all I have to do is say, hey, listen, like this is, you have the marketing, you have the PR, you have the design, you have the deployment, you have the sales, and you have like the kind of a built-in audience. And so it's kind of a no-brainer.
Right.
But for a mom and pop in a place like New York, it's extraordinarily difficult to survive. And especially now, I mean, local and state government has definitely shown their true colors, and they don't seem to care about the plight of the small business owner, the mom and pop in New York, because they're struggling. They can't survive on 25% capacity. They can't survive on 50% capacity.
Impossible.
The margins are impossible.
I mean, my job. By the way, what most of my partnerships have been mom and pops, kinds of venues, and I have come in after the venues have been created and they're not doing well. So I come in as a savior in a way, and a fixer, right? I have done the opposite of just being the investor and just watching it, which was wonderful in Colombia. Things were a little different over there. Like, I mean, so you have an idea, opening a venue for 2,000 people capacity, like super nice, whatever. You don't end up spending $500,000, and you probably get around 215 sponsors to help build. So it's like so different than what happens here in just that area of the equation. But I've owned 10, 11 venues, different bar, restaurant, different, in the industry, and 3-4 of them have been bad experiences, definitely. And every time I have said I will not do it again. As a matter of fact, when I finished writing the book, I said I would not do it again, and then I have done it again. But it's mostly that, like, partnerships, because of what you said at the beginning. Everybody needs marketing, and everybody needs to be able to sell their product and their services or whatever. And a lot of businesses think, especially when they have the issue of not having the capital, as you mentioned, that the first thing they want to cut on is that. They don't want to hire anybody professional that charges as a professional to do a professional job. Everybody goes in and they think, okay, so how much is the rent? Okay, I can make it. What?
Good. Well, how are you monetizing this one table? How much? What's the rate per
Yeah.
person per hour for this table for each
Yeah.
of the 7 days of the week, and
Yeah.
how many hours a week are you open? So that drives your projections. That
No
drives
idea.
like how much you think you're going to make, and then you have seasonal variance. You have like, compliance variance. Like there's just like so many different calculations
Yeah.
that you put into it. I have this like big, huge Trello board. I don't know if you know Trello is. It's a
Yeah, I use it.
project management software, and it just goes through. It's just like checklist after checklist, and they're like dependency checklists. So it's like I open up bars the same way that I would fly a plane. It's just go by the checklist and everything's going to be okay.
Right.
Just that way we think of everything. But,
Yeah.
no matter how good you are at it, there's just so many factors that you don't control. And that's why, there's no rock solid bulletproof formula to opening up a bar. And
Right.
so
Definitely.
for that reason, I'm out.
And by the way, add pandemic to that list now.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you gotta be
Yeah.
pandemic proof.
But I mean, like, what you were talking about is like you're talking about investing in bars and restaurants, and I'm making an assumption here that ultimately you wanted your money to work for you rather than you working for money and getting on the other side of that equation. And what a lot of people don't really fully internalize is the fact that if you use your money to create a business that generates cash flow and revenue, then eventually you can hire somebody to do your job. And you will get the benefits of owning that business, and then that's it. It's just the same way that real estate appreciates.
Right.
And so if you own that real estate, then you have the cash value that's worth something that you can either deed to your kids, or you can deed it to you can sell it and buy something else. You can there's so much. Oh my God, there's so many different things that you can do in real estate to cheat the government out of taxes, and it's just like the rich folks play a different game. And it's like I feel like we just need to get into that game, which and the same rules apply to us. We just don't know about them. And so, like, if you do the digging, you'll find financial advisors on YouTube, find them on LinkedIn that'll just tell you everything you know about how to not pay taxes.
Right.
So it's like when you go to a room full of 100 people and you say, what's your biggest expense in life? And when you say, what is it, rent? So I mean, 80 hands are going to go up. But the reality is that taxes are the number one expense in for everybody except for the very, very rich people. And so it's like we're comfortable paying 30% taxes or to banks, and we don't realize that how much is leaking through the cracks. So if we start thinking and acting like rich people, even with the little money that we typically have, I'm talking about tens of thousands of dollars here. And you can make investments of $5 into the stock market right now. I mean, you can go to Robinhood's, I forget what the other Stash, Acorns, and invest just a little bit. Just get it out of your pocket, because it's if it's in your pocket, you're spending it. If it's in the market, then you're making it, most likely.
100%.
Let's start thinking about like rich people.
100%. All right, so Jason, so we've been here over a half hour now. I don't wanna have anybody leaving us. So let me ask you a question. What is the biggest piece of advice that you can give to our viewers today?
There's only upside to starting a business. Yes, you're going to get kicked in the teeth. Yes, you are going to fail. But if you get back up, then eventually you'll be okay starting a business. And there's absolutely no risk to do it right now. Just decide what you love, and decide what you want to do, and decide where you want to be in 20 years, and then engineer that. Reverse engineer what retirement looks like.
Awesome.
Or maybe it's 10 years. And so I literally know how much I have a specific number goal, and every month and every week, I know exactly how much I want to make to achieve that goal. And so when you have that kind of mindset of like, this is what I need to do to kind of get to where I want to be, so I don't have to work for the rest of my life, or I can choose how much work I can choose how much I want to work for the rest of my life. Then it becomes much more tangible, much more visible. I mean, this is straight out of Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich.
No.
And it's like we have to get past this scarcity mentality where we're like, we are only worth the tips that we make. We are not. We are people. We have ideas. We are creative, and we provide significant and distinct value to the world. And I think that it's high time that we monetize that.
Right. Guys, by the way, you do not have to be a bartender to enjoy this book and to get good stuff out of it, as you don't have to be a promoter to enjoy mine. But so where can people get your book? On Amazon, right?
Amazon, and I think it's on a couple other places, but it's through Amazon. It's,
I
you know
mean,
what's crazy is like they actually print each book every time you buy it.
yep, on demand.
So, and print on demand. I thought that blew my mind. That's why I don't make any money on the book. That's why it has
Yeah,
to cost That's why it has to cost $10.
right.
And then the Kindle version coming out later this month is $3. So like obviously I'm not trying to be a millionaire here. I'm just trying to get the message out that we have options.
That's a good thing. All right, guys. So remember to follow me on Instagram at the Nightlife Entrepreneur. Join our group on Facebook, our page, sorry, Nightlife Entrepreneurs, and visit our website, nightlife.university. Where can they find you, Jason?
I'm everywhere at Jason Littrell, and that's Littrell. I'm active on LinkedIn. I automate all my social media stuff, so I spend more time listening than posting. But I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, Medium. I have 2 different blogs, and then I go live once or twice a week on my Facebook. Or the Facebook group is Bartender is a Business, which I think I'm actually going to open up to everybody. But you can also go to learn.jlittrell.com for a free course that's a companion for the book. Basically says the same thing and kind of puts it in a snackable way. But again, that's the idea is to make the information available and try hopefully inspire people. That's at learn.jlittrell.com.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure meeting you. I will finish the book and let you know how I feel about it.
Thanks, Julio.
Up
Appreciate
to now
it.
is really good. And see you guys next week.
All right. Thank you.